Hello, if you can hear me, please comment in the chat. I'm going to give everyone some time to jump on here. It's not quite 3 o'clock, but we wanted to make sure everything was working in terms of our equipment. If you can hear me, please comment in the chat box so I can make sure my audio is working correctly. I see a few participants have already logged on. We've got 2 people joining us, it looks like so far. Again, it's not supposed to start until 3 o'clock. I just wanted to go ahead and get on here a few minutes early just to make sure we didn't have any glitches. I'm going to mute my mic and just give everyone time to join us since it's not quite 3 o'clock yet. Just a few more minutes and I will get started. The time for this particular YouTube live is set for 3 o'clock. So we are just trying to wait and give everyone an opportunity to get on so that they don't miss everything. Okay, it's 3 o'clock. So thank you for joining us over here on the Free Your Children YouTube page. If you have subscribed to this channel, you will be able to participate in the live chat. So if you have not done that yet and you would like to participate, we have it set so that you have to subscribe to the channel. So if you haven't done that, you can do that now. It's going to have a time limit. You have to be subscribed for 5 minutes, I believe, before you will be allowed to participate in the chat section. But I can see the live chat. It's up. You should be able to see the live chat as well as we're going through this. Again, I'm going to try to squeeze a whole lot of information into as brief amount of time as possible. But before we get started, I do want to give kind of an overall synopsis of who I am personally and what and who Free Your Children is. So I founded Free Your Children 5 years ago. And our goal with Free Your Children is to educate and empower families and citizens with the information that they need to better protect their families and themselves. And so we believe that education is the key. I will say right up front that we do not want to represent homeschoolers. What we want to do, or parents, or people who believe in freedom and who are freedom minded, what we seek to do is empower you with the information you need to advocate for yourself and for your families. We want to activate citizens. We do not want you to be reactive. We want you to be proactive, and we want you to get involved with the legislative process so that your voices will be heard and so that you can advocate for yourselves. We believe that that is our Christian responsibility, and we believe if you are a Christian, that that is your Christian responsibility. If you have families, or even if you care about the future of the state that you live in, regardless of where you are, that is our civic duty as well. We are not just local to Tennessee. We are actually a national, we serve a national base of families, and we attempt to the best of our ability to track legislation and to issue calls to action and important information that we believe that families need to have regardless of where they live. So that's just a little background of who we are and just a tiny portion of what we seek to do. But I know that there have been some discussions and some questions in some chats in previous posts on the page. It may be coming from people who have not taken the opportunity to do the research regarding who we are and the work that we have done. So I wanted to use that time right at the beginning of this to kind of explain to you and give you a little overview of exactly what we have done, some of the things that we have done in the past. So last year in 2025, we hosted 6 seminars, and those seminars look different depending on the area where we are presenting because we customize those seminars for the location and for the group that we are presenting to. Again, these seminars focus on educational, parental, and constitutional rights. So we had the privilege and honor of giving 6 of those seminars last year. I also participated in 2 conferences, one in Missouri and one in the Pigeon Forge area. One thing that we are all really very proud of is the fact that our Free Your Children volunteer team drafted historic legislation last legislative session. So, homeschool moms, yes, the ones that are on social media, and homeschool dads wrote without an attorney. We did this on our own. We drafted historic legislation for the state of Tennessee that would have given homeschoolers in our great state true educational autonomy. We knew going in that it would be highly likely that the bill would not pass. It was called the Free Act. However, we had one purpose for that piece of legislation, and that was to shine a light on legislators in our state who did not believe in true educational and parental autonomy. We knew that this was an important discussion that we needed to have, and we knew that this was something very important that we needed to do because Tennessee historically has prided itself on being a red state. And we know and have seen firsthand that many of the legislators that are making decisions for our state of Tennessee are not participating in conservative values or beliefs. And so we knew that that particular piece of legislation, the Free Act, would really shine a light on those that truly believe in our Constitution and truly believe in educational and parental autonomy. And we did that. We accomplished that because it was very obvious those legislators who believe in those principles and those who do not. And if you're looking at the chat, you can see a link to the Free Act. So if you're not familiar with that bill, you can go and read it there. I am also a monthly contributor for the Murfreesboro Pulse, or the Borough Pulse, as it's also known. I have been for several years. You can go to our website at freeyourchildren.com and read all of the articles that I have penned to date for the Borough Pulse. You can also go to the Murfreesboro Pulse, sign up for their publication, and you can find my author page and read the articles there if you would like to. I also host the Free Your Children podcast that will be back up and running soon, but all of our archive shows are still there on our website. I have had the amazing, again, privilege to interview guests from all over the United States. And those interviews are a wealth of information. So if you haven't listened to those, you can access those over on our website. Again, that's freeyourchildren.com. I myself have been interviewed on multiple different platforms. I've been a guest on multiple different shows, and you may have seen those be posted over on our social media pages as well as linked to our website. We have a free monthly newsletter that you can sign up for. Again, you can do that over on our website. I highly encourage you to do that. We track legislation regularly, specifically legislation that affects parental, educational, and constitutional rights. We travel to the Capitol often. Last legislative session, we were there for weeks, multiple times a week, as we were trying to educate our legislators on the Free Act, the bill that we had written and were running last legislative session. I also serve as a consultant for political candidates, politicians, private school leaders, and for families as well. I also have sat, and so have some of my volunteers, with families in court as their constitutional rights were being challenged. We research extensively our elected officials and initiatives regarding educational, parental, and constitutional rights. We are the only Tennessee-based educational advocacy group that supports, understands, and connects research of Charlotte Iserbyt and John Kleizek about EdTech, FinTech, and global control systems. We move with lightning speed to identify and alert families to legislation that would endanger their rights. And we also think ahead to how future pieces of legislation and bills can impact our future. And just last week, I testified in the Utah House of Representatives as an education expert. So, contrary to popular belief and some narratives that seem to be spinning far and wide, we do not just post on social media. We are extremely busy. We wear lots of different hats. We are not raking in six figures a year as we do this work. We are self-funded. We are not funded by large NGOs. I can actually count on one hand the number of individuals that support this ministry, and they are citizens, like-minded, freedom-minded citizens that have helped us to be able to do the work that we are currently doing. And many of us that volunteer fund this particular ministry out of our own pockets. So that's just a little bit about who we are and what we do. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the legislation. And then once we get through that, I have some other things that I would like to address. So I'm going to have to stop every few seconds and look at the chats and see if there's anything over in the chat section that I am missing. Yeah, we don't just hold up signs. That is correct. If I'm missing anything over in the comment section, I will try my best to keep up with that. But I apologize in advance because as I'm doing this, I'm also trying to track the comments over here so I can make sure I'm not missing anything. So, one bill that I want to point out right off the bat, and we just recently posted about this. I was alerted to this bill this morning and I was busy homeschooling my kids. Oh, yeah. In addition to all the other things that I just mentioned, I am still currently homeschooling two of my own children. So, all of these laws in the state of Tennessee where I personally reside are bills. Bills they're attempting to pass into law and laws that are already have been passed affect my family personally as we live here in Tennessee and we are a homeschooling family. So that's a little bit more information about who we are here with For Your Children. So this one bill that I was realized that we needed to issue a call to action about this morning is Senate Bill 1958 by Stevens. It is scheduled to be in the Senate Judiciary Committee today at 3 p.m. It's set for the House Judiciary Committee for the 18th. That's tomorrow, 2/18/26. This is extremely important that you go ahead and contact your legislators and ask them to kill this bill. This bill particularly prevents citizens from holding the state accountable if they violate the Constitution. So, if you are challenging any of the constitutional laws or initiatives or agendas that the state is pushing forward or has already passed into law, then this is going to block your ability to hold them accountable for that, which for them would be fantastic because we know that the Education Freedom Scholarship Act is unconstitutional. So, of course, they don't want that challenge. So, naturally, they would want this bill to be passed into law. And in addition to that, all of the laws right now regulating homeschooling and private school in the state of Tennessee are unconstitutional. And of course, we have talked about that a lot over on the Free Your Children page. So they also would not want any of those laws brought into question and challenged. So again, that would make it very convenient for them if this bill were to pass. So I encourage you to contact your representatives, your senators, and your legislators and ask them to vote no on Senate Bill 1958. And I just recently posted about this over on the Free Your Children page. And so if you have any more questions about that particular bill, and you need a talk track, just let us know. And we're going to be putting those together for you as well. So that's the first bill. So again, that's Senate Bill 1958, House Bill 1971. So contact your representatives, Senate, and legislature and tell them that bill needs to die. They need to kill the bill. So that's the first one that we wanted to talk about. The second one that I wanted to bring up and bring to attention is the expansion of the Education Freedom Scholarship Act. If you have followed For Your Children for any length of time, you know that we have been opposed to school choice since our inception. We are not an organization that's changed our stance. We are not an organization that believes that the Education Freedom Scholarship Act is bad, but all other forms of school choice are good. We are opposed, in opposition to all forms of government-funded private education across the board because we know the roots and we also know the strings attached to that money. And as I've always said, what the government funds, it runs. If some of my moderators could drop a link to one of the articles that I penned recently about school choice, their version of freedom. That is a good article for you to read. It's a snapshot of what school choice looks like in several of the states that have already passed it, in addition to the strings that are attached to those monies, where you will see a theme of well-being, child checks or wellness checks, across the board there in those states. So read that article if you would like more information about what school choice is looking like in states where it has already passed. So obviously, we are opposed to the expansion of the voucher bill. We know that homeschoolers are the target. They've made it very clear. AFP, Americans for Prosperity, has made it very clear that their goal is to expand this in the state of Tennessee and to also swallow up the homeschooling community. So we want to make sure that we contact our legislators and tell them to vote no. The whole program needs to be repealed at this point. They let the Trojan horse into the room, but most definitely it does not need to be expanded. So this bill is House Bill 2532 by Lamberth, and the Senate bill, its companion bill, is by Johnson, 2247. Again, these are posted over on the Free Your Children page, but contact your legislators, email them, call them, and tell them to vote no on the Education Freedom Scholarship Act expansion. It's going to bankrupt the state. And of course, as it continues to swallow up, more and more areas of education, eventually all avenues of education will be government controlled. And of course, that is their long-term goal. So those two bills we haven't talked nearly as much about, and they haven't elicited nearly as much response as the ones that I'm going to jump into. And I'm trying to look over here and see if I've missed anything in the chats. Again, if you want to participate in the live chat, you have to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you will be allowed to do that. You're welcome, Diana. I see a thank you from you over there. So our next bill that I want to talk about that we are opposed to is Mabry's bill, which is House Bill 1896. And the companion bill is Senate Bill 2449. Now, if you have been following For Your Children over on our social media pages, you have seen the commentary from some of our legislators as they weigh in when we post about these bills, our opposition to these bills. And so no one is making them comment on our page. And so you can read their comments for yourselves and see what they have to say. They're typically not polite, I will say that. And so that is something worth noting as we get into our conversation as we move throughout this live. So Mabry's bill, he claimed that this bill was for adults. If you go back and read his commentary, you can see this. He claimed that it was not going to affect the homeschooling community, and that it didn't affect homeschooling students at all because this bill was written for adults. Again, multiple people weighed in on conversations about this bill. He accused us of not knowing how to read legislation, not knowing what we were talking about, which was funny because many people from other areas of the United States actually requested a copy of the bill, read the bill, and then challenged Mabry themselves. Americans for Prosperity also weighed in on this bill and decided to push us up in the algorithm by their ridiculous comments that they were posting on our page. So this bill affects Category 3 schools. And I will say right off the bat that this legislative session, they have targeted Category 1 homeschooling in the state of Tennessee, and they've targeted Category 3 homeschooling in the state of Tennessee. Now, the question around this particular bill is Category 3 virtual schools. And yes, the State Board of Education states that anyone who registers their child under a Category 3 school is not technically homeschooling. However, that particular category is a legal homeschooling option in the state of Tennessee. Therein lies the problem. Our homeschooling laws in the state of Tennessee are so convoluted, and there are so many categories that muddy the water regarding what is homeschooling and what is not homeschooling. So, because this is category 3 is a legal option for homeschooling in the state of Tennessee, then it does indeed affect homeschooling in the state of Tennessee. So, in the state of Tennessee, Category 3 non public schools are private schools that are regionally accredited by one of the accrediting agencies listed in State Board Policy 3.500. Some of these Category 3 schools also have national accreditation from the Distance Education Accrediting Commission, that's the DEAC. And under recent legislative changes, schools that are both DEAC accredited and regionally accredited by a Category 3 agency are treated as Category 3. One particular school within this category is Penn Foster High School. Many students that are considered homeschooling students because they are registering under this Category 3 option utilize Penn Foster. And as a matter of fact, one very ironic aspect to this is, remember, this is Aaron Mabry's bill, which is House Bill 1896. But Senator Adam Lowe has filed a bill, Senate Bill 1968, that we're going to talk about in just a moment. And when we posted about our opposition to his bill, a juvenile judge actually weighed in within the commentary of that particular bill and made the statement that many parents who were removing their children from public school after they found themselves within the juvenile justice pipeline based off of truancy were registering their children with none other than Penn Foster. So now you can see how both of these pieces of legislation are working in tandem with one another. Okay. So again, we are opposed to this particular bill that Aaron Mabry has written. The bill, it's not a very long bill. It's just a page and a couple of sentences on the backside if you print it off like that. And this is what it's saying. It's saying, Tennessee Code Annotated Section 495087 is amended by designating the existing language as subsection and adding the following as a new subdivision. Administer a nationally standardized achievement test that covers the subject areas of English, language arts, and mathematics to each student each school year. Tennessee Code Annotated Section 4950-807 is amended by adding the following as a new subsection. In order to operate in this state as an approved Category 3 non-public school, the State Board of Education shall require a private school described in subsection that serves students in any of the grades 9 through 12, those aren't adults, to administer a nationally standardized achievement test that covers the subject areas of English, language arts, and mathematics to each student who is 18 years of age or younger and has completed 50% of the high school program, and to each student who is 18 years of age or younger and has completed 90% of the high school program, unless the student who is 18 years of age or younger completes the entire high school program within a 12-month period, in which case each student is only required to take a nationally standardized achievement test required in this subsection once. And then Section 3 just speaks about promulgating the rules. So again, because this is Category 3, and because homeschoolers in the state of Tennessee actually can utilize that category as a legal homeschooling option, that again affects the homeschooling community. And because the juvenile judge entered into the commentary of Lowe's bill that parents were utilizing Penn Foster in order to remove their children from public schools, this bill is a concern. We do not need any more laws, unconstitutional laws, I may add, attempting to regulate any category of homeschooling in the state of Tennessee. So we are opposed to Mabry's bill, which is House Bill 1896 and Senate Bill 2449. Again, all of these bills regulating homeschooling and private schooling in the state of Tennessee, they're unconstitutional. Our Tennessee state constitution only gives our legislature one job, and that is for a free public education. What we're doing outside of that government system is outside of the realm of the jurisdiction of our legislature, and we should be holding them accountable. So we are going to oppose, as we have since it's been filed, that particular piece of legislation. And we believe that homeschoolers at large should be also opposing this legislation, because it does indeed affect the homeschooling community, because the more laws that they pass regulating any category of homeschooling in Tennessee will eventually affect all of us, because this system is incrementalism, and that was always the goal. Which brings us to the next bill, which is Senator Adam Lowe's bill. This is Senate Bill 1968 by Lowe. The House bill, its companion bill, is 1823 by Raper. What this bill does, and if you've been following Free Your Children for any length of time, you saw the post about this particular bill. And I'm going to back up and tell you that prior to this, Senator Lowe had filed another bill with the same intentions. That one included the homeschooling verbiage. And of course, we pushed back. And so that he withdrew that bill, and then he filed another bill. This bill does not have the homeschooling verbiage included in it. However, its implications are the same. It gives a judge the authority to make educational decisions for children, potentially not allowing them to register their child in a legal homeschooling option in the state of Tennessee, and making them, stay enrolled in public school. The reason why this is so problematic is, if you read the commentary that Senator Lowe was dropping in the comments, and if you read the commentary that the juvenile judge that took credit for bringing this bill to Senator Lowe for him to run it, if you read those commentaries, then you would understand that this is about closing the truancy loophole, as they claimed. And so we have already seen this unconstitutional abuse of power in the state of Tennessee, in Coffee County specifically. That is where we went to court and sat with families while we watched judges tell these parents that they could not enroll their children in homeschooling options, and that they were required to enroll them back in a public school. There is no law in Tennessee right now that states a parent cannot withdraw their child from public school and enroll them in another legal homeschooling or private school option in the state of Tennessee. There is no law that says that you cannot do that. This bill seeks to do that. This seeks to lock parents up in the truancy trap if they find themselves, in front of a judge because of truancy. And let's face it, each school sets their own truancy model, and a county very close to us wanted to change their truancy model to include 3 days of unexcused absences. And as if a child is experiencing bullying, if they have a chronic illness, if there's a death in the family, anything could result in a child missing 3 or more days, or even 5 or more days of unexcused absences. And now they're entered into this tiered intervention program, and then they find themselves in juvenile court. And so this bill, according to Lowe and according to the judge, Judge Andrew Morgan, who brought this bill to Lowe for him to sponsor it, stated that this will close up that loophole. And I even wrote an article recently for the Borough Pulse that you can now pull up and read, that states Judge Morgan was talking about the truancy court, and he was saying that this was a way for them to ensure the appropriate funding for public schools by keeping these students in the seats via the juvenile court system. So we are opposed to this bill. It is not the position of a court to determine a child's educational path. That is the right of the parents. That is their constitutional right. So obviously, we are opposed to Senate Bill 1968 by Senator Lowe, and House Bill, the companion bill is 1823 by Raper. So if you have not yet, contact your legislators and your senators and your representatives and tell them to kill this bill. And don't be afraid of using the language, kill the bill. That it needs to be worded strongly enough where they understand how important this is to you. And the last bill that I want to talk about that's still moving through, well, right now it's kind of stalled, but we're going to get into that in just a minute. But this is Slater's bill, William Slater's bill. So this is House Bill 1729 by Slater. And if some of you remember, as I started this particular live, I talked about the FREE Act that we drafted last legislative session. That bill was killed by Republicans in the House Education Committee, and the chair of that committee was William Slater. He killed that particular bill after reading a letter from the juvenile judges and agreeing with the juvenile judges that if parents in the state of Tennessee were given true educational autonomy, we could use that then to potentially abuse our children. You can see the video where he makes those statements and agrees with those judges right here on YouTube. We have that posted so you can see it for yourself. And so, of course, the bill was killed. So if a legislator is going to claim that they are homeschool friendly, I do not consider a legislator who accuses law-abiding homeschool families of potentially abusing their children if they're given true educational autonomy homeschool friendly. I do not. So we already had legislation on our radar that could potentially be sponsored or carried by these different legislators that we knew who had proved themselves last legislative session of not being homeschool friendly. So when this bill came out, this legislative session, and this is not the first time that he's tried to get this particular bill passed, I was notified that this bill was brought to him by the CLT company, the Classic Learning Initiatives company. So we did a little digging into who the CLT company is. One of the big concerns that I have, well, there are several concerns that I have about this bill. One of the big concerns I have about this bill is CLT, the company, promotes and advocates for school choice. One of William Slater's constituents contacted me, and we had a big discussion about why we were opposing the bill, why I thought this was an issue. And so we've talked about the Education Freedom Scholarship Act here in Tennessee. You know that we are opposed to school choice in this state and why. We have more information about that over on our website about our stance regarding school choice, multiple posts that you can read about, multiple radio shows that you can listen to, multiple articles that we've drafted or I've drafted about why we are opposed to school choice. But this particular company, CLT, is a huge advocate for school choice. So we attempted to find out who the vendors were, who the businesses were that had applied for the state of Tennessee to benefit from the Education Freedom Scholarship account dollars. Then we quickly found out that that was not public information. The public cannot access a list of the vendors. So one of Slater's constituents asked him if CLT had applied to be a vendor in the state of Tennessee so that they could utilize the Education Freedom Scholarship dollars at the expense of the taxpayers. And that constituent told me that Representative Slater had confirmed that this particular company was on that vendor list, which is a concern because why would we be writing bills in the state of Tennessee for private businesses to benefit financially from the Education Freedom Scholarship account dollars? That is a huge red flag for me. Then, after reading through this bill, it and I'm sure several of you have already read this bill because I know that Slater is telling everyone that he is going to have sections 2 and 3 removed personally himself, is what I have been told. He's not told that to me, but that's what I have been told from many people, that that is what he is stating. The issue with that is this bill has already been filed. So, in order to remove 2 and 3, legislatively, there would have to be an amendment to this bill. There has not been an amendment to this bill filed that I have seen as of yet. He's claiming that he's going to take out, this is what I've been told, sections 2 and 3. And I've been told this again by numerous people. But it still leaves in sections of this bill that are very concerning. Years ago, we've homeschooled for 22 years. At one point in time, I was certified as a person that could proctor the Stanford test for homeschool families. I could also proctor my own children's test as long as there were other children taking this particular test as well, the one that I was administering them. This bill says that the test cannot be proctored by an individual who is related to the student. So if you plan to utilize the CLT, no one that's related to the student can proctor this particular test, and it's recorded by the developer of the nationally normed examination at the expense of the parent teacher. Now, with Slater making the claim, Representative Slater making the claim that he's going to remove sections 2 and 3 of the bill, my question to him and anyone supporting this would be, why were those sections included to begin with? That's what we should be asking, because the intentions of the bill are very clear, with sections 2 and 3 included. So again, and this is affecting category 1 homeschooling. So I said earlier that they're targeting category 1 homeschoolers this session. They're targeting category 3 homeschoolers this session. So again, incrementalism. We begin to try to tighten the screws on all of the multiple different categories of homeschooling in the state of Tennessee in order to get them, all in a line, all following, having the same requirements that are attached to them. Bills are very easy to amend, and in Tennessee, rules are very easily promulgated. So these are all concerns that the homeschool community needs to be aware of. We cannot just think about the ramifications of a piece of legislation right now in the short term. We have to think about what those ramifications will look like in the future. So, of course, that was another section of the bill that we were highly concerned with. But one section of the bill that very few people have even addressed is a section that I'm going to address now, which is that a public school shall allow a homeschool student to take an advanced course or preparatory college entrance examination offered by the public school if space is available. Okay, so what this bill is saying is that a student could go into their local high school or their local school and take an advanced AP course. This is an extremely slippery slope for homeschool students in the state of Tennessee. First off, it blurs the lines between homeschoolers and public school students if you're going in to utilize their services. Secondly, as a homeschooling parent, if you send your child into a public school, you are then opening up your student to be potentially assessed as an at-risk student. We do not need the public school system offering AP classes, advanced classes to the homeschooling community. We already have that in the bag. We already have those opportunities available to us. When the government steps in to offer you something, that is not a help. That is what we call a trap. And so the fact that this bill was brought to Representative Slater by the CLT company, and then they included this in the bill, that is very concerning as well, because that has nothing to do with the CLT test. And then, of course, sections 2 and 3, as of right now, as of the recording of this live, still remain. And you can go back and read the bill yourselves. Now, will we support this bill if he takes out sections 2 and 3? Absolutely not. We are 100% opposed to this bill because, again, this is affecting another category of homeschooling. This is a company that seeks to gain monetarily off of the Education Freedom Scholarship account. And thirdly, if you read the bill, this doesn't sound like much of an opportunity for homeschoolers. If you read, how the bill is written and the strings attached to this particular piece of legislation. Again, if Representative Slater was homeschooling friendly, if he was truly homeschooling friendly, he truly believed in opportunities for homeschoolers, he would have passed the FREE Act last legislative session with flying colors, because that was a bill that offered the biggest opportunity of all with no cost to the taxpayers of Tennessee whatsoever. Okay, so we are opposed. Again, we do not need another piece of homeschool legislation that is unconstitutional passed in the state of Tennessee. So we are opposed to that particular bill. We had also issued a call to action for Senator Whaley's bill, and he actually removed that particular bill. He withdrew it. So we were very happy to hear that many of you took action immediately when we issued those calls to action, and we effectively were able to have that bill withdrawn. So we know that we are doing a lot of great things in the state of Tennessee. We know that they are hearing our voices, and for some reason that seems to be bothering certain organizations and certain individuals, that we have grown our voices and that we are actively educating families so that they can advocate for their own freedoms. And I will say this again, we have no desire to advocate in your place. Our desire is to give you the information you need as a parent and as a citizen of the state of Tennessee to have a seat at the table yourselves and to participate in conversations and dialogues with your legislators. So the last half of this legislative update, I want to address a few things that were brought to my attention. Again, I do not think that Representative Slater is a friend of homeschooling whatsoever. He proved that last legislative session. I do not think that his bill is an opportunity for homeschoolers. I think it's an opportunity for the CLT company to make money off of the Education Freedom Scholarship accounts. These bills right now, the ones that I just mentioned, not the bill that blocks citizens from being able to hold our state of Tennessee accountable for unconstitutional actions. That one, it's moving through right now. They're in committee right now. They'll be in committee tomorrow. Please take action. Go ahead, contact your legislators, tell them to kill the bill. The voucher bill, I don't think it's been assigned to a committee yet. We're still tracking that in real time. None of the other bills were on the committee calendar that I mentioned this week. And so we're watching those. If you have not contacted your legislators and told them to vote no and to kill the bill, I highly encourage you to do so. If you are interested in preserving what little freedom you have currently here in Tennessee, because every single law that is passed could potentially lead to more entanglements and more legislative overreach in the future. And so the less laws, unconstitutional laws that we have, the better. And so we want to make sure that we stop this madness of consistently filing pieces of legislation that seek to erode the freedoms that we still have, what little bit of freedom we still have in the state of Tennessee. So, again, we want families to be engaged themselves. When we issue calls to action, we encourage you to heed those, to make phone calls, to write emails. One of the reasons why we have held off in creating talk tracks is because we like for the people to use their own voice when they write their legislators about a particular piece of legislation. But if you need help with that, we'll be happy, to help you with wording when you are contacting them if you're not comfortable with that. Another thing that I'm really concerned with is that I personally am not comfortable with individuals in suits going into our legislature to have conversations with our legislators in a back room where I do not have a voice. I don't want or need them doing that for me. I want to have a seat at the table and I want to have a voice. It is extremely condescending to imply, if that was the attempt, that homeschooling moms are not equipped to read and interpret legislation. That is a very condescending narrative. And ironically, those same moms and dads are the ones that drafted the historic legislation for Tennessee last legislative session. Do not let anyone tell you that you are not capable of reading a bill, understanding a bill, and then reaching out to your legislator and having a dialogue with them, because you can do that. Again, if you would like assistance, we would be happy to help with that. But you are equipped and you can do that, and that is your right as a citizen within the state. Another narrative that I see floating around a lot, and I've spoken to leaders all across the United States who are experiencing the same thing, and that is this virtue signaling, where we are trying to create a silence narrative, where we are telling people, shh, don't ask questions. Don't ask questions. That's not Christian. Don't speak out. Don't hold your legislators accountable. You're not being very Christian. Well, as Christians, we're called to act. We are not called to be passive. We are tasked with protecting our children, and that is what we are here to do. I just happen to do it on a larger scale because my ministry is nationwide. When we see a bill that threatens our parental, educational, or constitutional rights, we are going to speak out. It is not unchristian to ask a question. It is not unchristian to hold your legislators accountable. We can't control how our legislators respond to those questions. We can't control how our legislators respond to a call to action where we are asking them to kill a bill. We have seen several of our legislators respond in our social media comments. And I will let you make a determination for yourself how you felt those responses came across. Were they respectful? Were they kind? Were they Christian? We have been called a lot of names, the homeschooling community here in Tennessee, simply because we asked questions that they did not want to answer. We've been called tribal. We've been called not very intelligent. We have been accused of lying. The fact of the matter is, we are perfectly capable of reading legislation, interpreting it, and then acting on it. We are perfectly capable of having conversations with our legislators. Many of you probably watching this have been with us to the Capitol. We have never been rude, disrespectful, or unkind to our legislators. I can't say the same for them. I never go anywhere alone. I always have witnesses with me present when I'm speaking to them because of narratives like this that they attempt to circulate. So, if you have questions about what happens at the Capitol, I highly encourage you to go in for yourself and have conversations with your legislator. Now, one thing that I don't consider very Christian is censorship, no transparency, and not being truthful. And we are seeing that happen over and over again. And that is a concern because you cannot partner with someone who censors you. You cannot partner with anyone if they are not being transparent. So there again, there have been a lot of narratives floating around by different organizations and individuals, and so, we thought that it would be appropriate in this legislative update for us to discuss some of those. Again, I do not believe that any organization or any individual should have the authority to go in and speak on your behalf without you being present and having a seat at the table. If any organization is telling you, you just sit back, let us take care of it, and then we'll tell you when to act, that's a red flag. Again, you need to exercise your own right to participate in the legislative process. That is your civic duty. And I highly encourage you to get involved because many times what has happened in our state is that our rights are being consistently compromised to the point to where we are eroding our freedoms. And so when someone comes to me, and I do get interactions, emails, text messages sent to me by other organizations regarding my position on particular bills. And my position on legislation for homeschooling in the state of Tennessee is this: it's all unconstitutional. We need to stop writing bills in the state of Tennessee that are unconstitutional. And that is where the focus should be. Um, I'm trying to look in the comments over here and see if there's anything else that I may have missed or that you would like for me to address. Um, as I've said again, all of these bills are working in tandem with one another, just as they did last legislative session, which all lead to incrementalism. The control has always been getting all homeschoolers on the same page, taking the same test, having to teach the same curriculum, so that eventually all areas of education in the state of Tennessee will be government controlled. That's the plan, and that's the goal, and we've been marching toward that. Last legislative session, when the Learning Pod Act passed, again, that is not a benefit for the homeschooling community in the state of Tennessee. It blurs the lines of homeschooling. Many of those hybrid schools and learning pods are going to be applying as they expand this voucher program to accept education freedom scholarship dollars, that is then going to put all of the freedoms at risk for all the categories of homeschooling. So you shouldn't just be concerned about the one category of homeschooling that you are currently in, because the goal, again, is incrementalism. And we've seen this happen again and again and again. So that's something that you need to be educated about, and that's something that you need to understand is just because a bill, may look innocent, that doesn't mean that that is going to always be the case, especially when we know that the goal is to swallow up the homeschooling community within this push to expand the education freedom scholarship dollars in the state of Tennessee. Sensationalism. Apparently, some entities do not like the posts that we make on social media, which I kind of find funny because I know that the legislators certainly don't like it, because there are two things that legislators understand: one is money, and the other's fear of not getting reelected, fear of their constituents pushing back, asking them questions, and potentially ousting them from their seats. So, if someone is telling you that it is your responsibility to not challenge your legislators, to not ask them hard questions, that you should always have a smile on your face and not do anything to upset them, because apparently, according to some people, some of our legislators are sensitive to social media posts. Okay, that's your job. You decided to become a legislator in the state of Tennessee. With that comes responsibility. And one of those responsibilities is listening to your constituents instead of the lobbyists that are attempting to get bills passed in this state. Listening to the people that these laws are actually going to affect. And that's another thing that I want to talk about here. I do not get paid to do what I do with Free Your Children. And I wear a lot of hats, as do my volunteers, and they don't get paid either. So when I say this, I'm doing this because I live and homeschool my children in the very state where, if these laws are passed, it will personally affect us. It will personally affect my family, my children, and my grandchildren who are also homeschooled. Many of these individuals that are invested in bills or that are meeting with legislators in offices, they don't even live in the state of Tennessee. So, how much skin do they have in the game? Are they going to be the ones that are going to have to be living and homeschooling and educating their children under the laws that are being passed in our states? Those are questions that you need to be asking when you're trying to decide, what course of action you need to take as a resident in the state of Tennessee. Anything else? If any of you have questions, please make sure that you comment. I'm going to try to catch those. I will also say, someone said, and just because a bill does not include the word homeschool does not mean it doesn't affect homeschool families. Amen. Absolutely. That's exactly what I've said over and over again throughout this whole video. All the bills that we discussed today, I don't care what you have been told, they do affect homeschooling in the state of Tennessee. We have heard that Slater's bill for the CLT, or AKA the CLT bill, is going to be heard next Tuesday at 9 a.m. and we will be watching that closely. Let's see. Someone said Representative Slater has been attempting for the past 6 years to get this passed. He's been unsuccessful through the higher education committees. Now K through 12 committees oppose the bill. I'm trying to look to see if there are any other questions or comments that I have missed. These truancy bills are being introduced nationwide. Yes, they are. This is a nationwide push focusing on chronic absenteeism and truancy. And I think it's very important to note here that we were always opposed to the at-risk boarding charters or the opportunity boarding charters that have now been passed and are operational in the state of Tennessee. I've written extensively about this. You can go back several years and look at our calls to action. I just recently wrote an article about the newest opportunity charter that has opened up in the state of Tennessee. One of the criteria for those at-risk or opportunity boarding charters is chronic absenteeism, truancy, adjudication by a judge. So they are definitely shoring up Tennessee in order to be able to advance their agenda. And again, you can read more about that. So I hope you found this helpful. I wanted to go over these bills. We will, again, soon be relaunching our podcast series and bringing in more leaders all across the United States so you can see what this is looking like in their respective states. I'm watching pieces of legislation that are extremely similar, if not almost identical, to legislation that has either already passed in Tennessee or legislation similar to what they're trying to pass in Tennessee, moving across the nation. So remember that you don't just live on an island. And again, this is definitely an agenda that they are implementing. And I think this live that I did was extremely timely because of the Senate bill, which prevents citizens from holding states accountable if they violate the Constitution. And I think that that says it all. That literally ties everything together, is that they know, our Republican legislature knows in the state of Tennessee that they are violating our Constitution, and they want to be able to continue to get away with it and not be challenged legally. So, my challenge to you is to get involved, activate, do not be reactive, be proactive. Respond to calls to action. If you can, show up at the Capitol. If you want to connect with us on a personal level, you can send us an email through our website, freeyourchildren.com. We have multiple other lists that we can add you to so that we can connect with you on a more personal basis. The newsletter is free. You can sign up there. We post up to date, more real time calls to action, there as well. So I would encourage you all to get activated and to get involved and to respond. There are multiple other organizations who've issued calls to action about Senate Bill 1958. And so heed those calls to action and contact your legislators. Tell them to kill the bill. Don't be afraid of using, strong language. And when I say strong language, I mean do not be afraid to say kill the bill. Okay. One thing that I will caution you about is, again, incrementalism will too. Incrementalism and the compromising of our freedoms by amending and amending and amending legislation that can, then once it's passed into law, can be amended at a future date. If the piece of legislation has that many issues attached to it, it doesn't need to be passed in the first place. If it's trying to regulate something that constitutionally they have no right to regulate, it shouldn't be a law. Remember, I don't get compensated when our freedoms are threatened in Tennessee or across the nation. I don't get compensated at all. I'm just doing this because I am a parent. I have 30 plus years of experience in the education field. I've seen where this started. I know where we are now. I know where it's headed in the future. We homeschool our children. Our grandchildren are homeschooled. And I'm doing this because it's a call that was placed on my heart. And we're a Christian ministry, but everything we're doing applies to everyone. Constitutional freedoms apply to everyone, no matter what faith ideologies or lack thereof that you subscribe to. And so our goal is to protect our constitutional rights, and for Christians to protect our rights to educate our children from a biblical worldview. So thank you for joining in. I hope I covered enough information that you better understand why we stand in opposition to these bills. If you are not following us on our social media platforms, I highly encourage you to do that. Follow us on YouTube, follow us on Substack. Sign up for our free newsletter, follow us on X, follow us on Facebook. And make sure that we can connect with you on multiple different platforms. We are censored immensely by some of the organizations that claim to be doing the same work that we're doing. We can't have conversations if we don't have a seat at the table. So what we want you to have is we want you to have your own seat at the table. We don't want to take that seat from you. I don't want to meet with legislators in a back room at the Capitol without you present. I want you to come and join me and sit down at that table and voice your concerns and have dialogue with our legislators. That's how this is supposed to work. And so I encourage you to do that. If you can't make it to the Capitol, contact us and tell us how you feel about it. Write a letter to your legislators. Tell them how you feel about it. Call them on the phone. If you live too far away from the Capitol, call and make an appointment with your legislators to have them meet you in the area where you live and start creating dialogue with them. Even if you don't agree, it's even more important that they hear from you and understand that you have a right to voice your concerns. They work for you. And somehow in this political process, we have forgotten all of that. We have forgotten the fact that we are the employer and they are the employee. When you go to work, does your boss come in and beg you to do your job? You shouldn't have to beg your legislator to do his job or her job. You should not have to beg your legislator to uphold your constitutional rights. And what happens if you go to work and you don't do your job? You get what? Fired. So that's what we need to be doing in Tennessee. We need to be holding these legislators accountable. And if they don't do their jobs correctly, they need to be voted out. And they need to have that dialogue and be told that, listen, you're supposed to be representing me. This is what we expect you to do. And if they're not willing to have those conversations with you, then they're not representing you to begin with. And that's a big, huge problem that we see at our legislature is they're representing lobbyists and not their constituents. And it's up to the people to hold them accountable. So anyway, I hope everyone has a fantastic day. Please make sure you connect with us on all of the social media platforms. We look forward to hearing from all of you. You are making a difference. When you heed those calls of action and you start contacting those legislators, they're listening because I'm getting all the heat, which is okay. That's exactly what we want. We want to let them know that we are capable, that we have a voice, and that we will utilize it. And when they do something right, we will be happy to give them the credit they deserve. But when they do something that tramples on our parental, educational, and constitutional rights, we will be here to hold them accountable. So I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you soon. And get busy right now with those calls to action and contacting your elected officials and telling them to kill those bills. Have a great day.